Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming tonight. My name is Nancy Nelson. I'm chairing the meeting this evening because Melissa Sawfield is not in the state. So the first item of business is demolition review for 1710 Lowell Road. And because I'm an across the street abutter, I will be recusing myself this evening. I think the discussion can proceed without me. Correct? Anything else? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot.
We do need to do a roll call.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if we can introduce the rest of the commission members who are here. Michael, do you want to start?
Sure. My name is Michael Cpc. Good evening.
And according to my screen, next would be Alan.
Bogosian.
And who else is here? Let's see. On the commission, Bob Gross. Yeah, sorry, Bob. I took away your thunder. Okay, that's the commission.
Nope.
And do you see anybody else?
Yep, we have Tom and Rebecca.
Oh, okay. I'm not seeing them unless it's a number. So Tom and Rebecca, could you introduce yourselves? And Tom, you're
on mute. I saw your lips moving, but you're on mute.
That's better. Thanks.
And,
the wonderful world of Zoom.
And where's Rebecca? Oh, there she is. Hi, Rebecca. Okay.
Hi, I'm Rebecca LeMaitre.
Okay. Good enough?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to leave you for now, and I'll be back in a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, so we received a demolition review application for 1710 Lowell Road. I believe everyone's seen the materials online. I can pull it up if we'd like. But at this point, I would just turn it over. I believe Paul Bartkus is here as the applicant. So I'll probably just turn it over to him to kind of present his applications and the reasons for demolition. And then we can have a discussion after that.
Hi, this is Dan Barkus. I'm sitting with my father, Paul. Can you hear me, Heather? You're muted to us, but
yes, we can.
Okay. So basically, my dad was planning on selling the house, and we've had a few people walk through it, and from builders to potential house buyers, and from what the feedback that we've gotten is that the house is too far gone to restore. So we think that the only real opportunity to sell the property is to be able to get a demolition permit and allow someone to replace the house.
Okay, I'll just turn it over to the commission if you have questions for the applicant.
I have a question. That opinion that that it's too far gone to restore, is that a professional opinion based on an actual assessment, or is that just?
Several different builders that we know of have walked through. We don't have an engineer to go in and to deem it unsound. We can have that done, but the builders that we've asked, we're in Westminster now. We grew up in Concord, but the builders that we sent down from here, Paul Gauguin, Gary Cpc, to look at it, they said, you know, basically the house was built on the ground without a foundation, and my grandfather dug the foundation and put field stone underneath the bottom of the house to hold it up off of the ground. So there was never really a cellar, and then he put in the heat and he put in the water tanks and things like that. So it was never really a structure that was built even on a stone foundation or anything. So the back of the house is now tipping out. The top of the house is in pretty good shape because it was built with large beams, and the structure on the top is good, but the bottom part of it is held up by a series. The floors are held up by a series of lolly columns, multiple. And there's an extensive amount of rot all the way around the house. So
Thank you.
When you say around the house, do you mean on the outside or the inside?
both in the cellar, around the back of the house, all the windows, all the sills, from the clapboards to the actual framing is dry rot, and because it's sitting on the ground.
Mhm. Well, the house is almost 300 years old. Heather, you did a site visit. Who did you do it with?
Tom.
And did you observe, did either of you observe this rotting in the interior?
We don't do interior when we do the site visits, just exterior. So I did notice extensive rot on the clapboards and the windows, the gutters, that sort of thing.
I visited the site myself on the outside just because the house is in close proximity to the road. And I did see that. But you do see that on a lot of structures that are several hundred years old that haven't had any remedial repair in the last decade or 15 or 20 years. So, it would seem to me.
Is the basement a dirt basement or a concrete basement?
Dirt. It was hand dug with 5-gallon pails. It's a shallow basement. It was just done, probably in the 30s, and there was no real heat or furnace until my grandfather put it into the late 30s, 40s. No indoor plumbing or anything. So it, like I said, there's no traditional foundation other than the beams that the house sat on. The frame was lifted up and rocks were slipped in underneath the large beams that what they would use for the foundation in those days, and those are rotted. So,
And is the house held up on lally columns or cedar posts?
Mostly lally columns now. Throughout the cellar, my father and I have been adding more and more twist lally columns to hold up inside the center of the house and the exterior of the inside of the house.
And those lally columns are being supported off of bricks or
Correct.
concrete blocks in the basement?
Correct.
Tom, did you want to kind of summarize the history of the house?
Yes, indeed. Hi, Paul. Tom Beardsley here. Heather and I went for a site visit about 2 weeks ago. I've lived in Concord area for 15 years, and it's always a delight to drive in up towards Carlisle, and this house has always caught my sight as I pass it, and I slow down occasionally to see it because I see, from an historical perspective, I see the 17th century there. To me, I would say 1690. I see that the Concord Historical Commission say it was sometime between 1678 and 1723. And there's also another connection, certainly with the rich history here, is that the direction the house is facing. I think this is something to do with the fact that Lowell Road wasn't built, wasn't driven through before the house was built in the late 17th century, and that's why it's facing towards the road. And there's just a connection for me for many years. I worked at the old manse and got to know the history of that particular area of Concord very well. There's a little bit of a connection with the Old North Bridge. The original Old North Bridge was pulled down by Ezra Ripley sometime in the early 19th century because a new toll bridge, and I think it was called Flint's Bridge, was built to go on the new road to Carlisle. So that's when that road went through. and there's just a connection there, I feel, with our rich history. And this, this last week, we received a letter from the Concord Historical Commission asking, requesting of us that we look to what ways we can to preserve it because of its rich history on many levels, and the fact that it was built by Carlisle's first settler, James Adams, who operated a mill nearby. So my initial feeling to this, and I understand the structural problems, but it would look, it's just so important, I think to the landscape, the visual part of it. We are seeing the 18th century when we drive up to it. And I just feel that it would be a big loss for both Concord and Carlisle to lose that historical perspective of the late 18th century and this area's early English settlement.
Bob, I can see you talking, but I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear Bob?
No.
I could,
You could?
yes.
Oh, strange.
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Not muted.
Bob, do you want to try like leaving the meeting and coming back in and seeing if that fixes it?
Well, while Bob does that, I just want to second pretty much everything Tom just said. I too was really struck by the orientation of the house when I drove by to do a brief visit. And I was also incredibly struck by the historical importance of this as that night of the town meeting that that divided Concord from Carlisle. So I think it's there's a lot worth preserving there.
Michael or Alan, do you have anything else to add while we wait for Bob?
I wasn't able to drive by and see the structure, so I'll probably I'll take a drive by tomorrow and take a look at it, but as of now, I don't.
Yeah, I think that the home is extremely significant historically and strategically where it's located. So, and based on this letter from the Carlisle Historical Society on what took place there and who owned it, et cetera, and who built it, I do think there should be an effort working with the owners to try to figure out if there was a method of repairing it to a level of somebody wanting to buy it and restore it.
I still can't hear
Can't
you.
hear you, Bob. I wonder if it's Bob's computer mic rather than the Zoom mic.
Can you join on your phone, Bob? I can't hear you. If you want to try joining on your phone, if that's possible, or like an iPad or another computer.
Try turning up the
Can't hear you.
Tom, did you say you could hear him?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought somebody said they could hear him.
I believe Dan said, can you still hear him?
I was wrong. I was thinking Bob was Michael, sorry.
Oh, okay.
We have the same color hair.
Bob, do you have a phone you can join on? Or if you want to like type in a comment to the chat and I can read it out loud. Maybe we should turn it over to public comment while we wait for Bob. If anyone has a public comment, if you want to unmute yourself or raise your hand and I can unmute you.
Could I ask a question, Heather?
Yes.
So Michael was talking about possibly helping my dad in ways to restore the house. Is that a financial help? Does the commission help individuals who own houses to restore them so that they could keep the house intact? Is that something that the commission does?
I apologize if you misunderstood what I said, or if I said something. I said maybe somebody could be brought in to evaluate the structural integrity of the structure. The exterior that can always be repaired, but obviously the structural elements are important, and even then they can be reinforced. But I do think, as I said, that both historically, based on what we've read, based on what we've seen, and the year that the home was built, that if there could be some kind of an effort collectively, because it sounds like the Carlisle Historical Society wants to get involved, to come up with a way of evaluating the structure to help you figure out a methodology of saving the structure, getting the cost-benefit ratio back to you, because clearly in historic structures, when you get involved, it does become somewhat costly in certain areas. And then maybe somebody could come and have an interest in a historical structure to put money into it to save it and live there.
So back to my original question, does either Carlisle or Concord Commission help monetarily to balance out the burden of getting it to a position where it's cost effective to keep as a saleable home, or are you just talking about information?
I believe he's just referring to information. The Concord Historical Commission, we have like a $0 budget every year.
Okay.
So we don't have any funding to distribute.
Heather, if you're still open to public comment and it's appropriate, can you hear me?
Yes. Can I just see if we can hear Bob real quick before I turn it over?
Sure.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. I don't know why, but my iPad worked on my laptop.
Well, you're up, Bob.
Okay, so is your father, Jack Paul, the author of the report on the house that sits in the library and that Ann Forbes used in writing the history of the house?
Is he the author of
Yeah, because Paul A. Bartkus is the author of A History of the House at 1710 Lowell Road. Is that true?
That it could have been my brother Paul Jr. and my mother. Yeah.
Okay, well, you all know well the importance of this house in Concord's history. And I wanted to underscore a couple of things that seem like disadvantages today, but are really part of its heritage. It was the house where people first gathered to organize to separate a district of Carlisle from the town of Concord so that they could support their own meeting house and minister. And, it looks still pretty lonely out there on Lowell Road, not many places around it. And that's just the point. Imagine these people in the late 17th, early 18th century moving so far out to make lives for themselves. We don't often have places that are so resonant on the landscape that we can actually imagine 17th century English people moving out there so far from the town center when they came from a culture that believed in living around meeting houses and town centers. So that's one thing. The second is that Deacon Joseph Chandler, who married into the family, was a major political figure in Concord in the years of the early republic, when he was a legislator, a representative of Concord to the assembly. So you've got a place that is meaningful on the landscape.
Right.
And it's got all kinds of disadvantages that you describe rightly. But that's what we call a vernacular landscape. It was a house altered and renovated by people who didn't have lots of money, who came and adjusted it for the sake of living. We usually have houses of rich people, but this wasn't. This was a working farmhouse. And to lose that is to lose a heritage of the ordinary people who built the country.
Well, can I respond, Heather? So you're exactly right. My dad, my uncle, and my grandfather used it as a chicken farm up until my dad sold the major part of the farm in 1986, 85, 86. But that has been the crux of living in Concord early. The farmers all got pushed out, and you know, it's too bad. But people have to live, and people my brother, my father, my uncles have propped up the house and kept it into a state where my sister, who now lives in it, could stay there for many years past its life, just because we had the determination to hang on as long as we could. My dad's 80 years old now. My sister's children have graduated from Concord Carlisle. The house is still in shape that it's livable, but it's falling down. And my dad wants to be able to move on. So if you can come up with some ideas how a farmer.
I do have an idea for you.
Sure.
Have you had any conversations with Middlesex School? Middlesex provides faculty housing in a number of its properties. That house renovated could make some nice faculty housing.
Yeah, it's just, it gets back to the cost of renovating it. And Middlesex School, I grew up across the street at 1731 and had a lot of friends at Middlesex School, and we understand how Middlesex School operates very well. But it still costs a lot of money to renovate the house, and they're going to look at the bottom line just as well as anyone else is going to look at the bottom line.
But why decide for them? They're a nonprofit.
This is true.
Why not make a proposal?
Well, we could, and
They know it's for sale.
Yeah, and it's been for sale for the last month, and we, quite frankly, haven't had any interest from them at all. But
Heather, is that something that the Historical Commission could try to intercede to help happen?
I mean, it's always something we can send an email letting them know that this house is on the market and it's historically significant, and the commission would like to see it saved. And if
And they won an award from us for their renovation of that barn,
Well,
which was not, after all, a profit-making enterprise they engaged in.
It's always an email or a letter we can send.
As an alumna, I don't know if I need to then recuse myself, or if that's an appropriate thing for me to put my name on as strongly supporting that idea.
I mean, it seems to me you don't have any buyers right now. Or the other thing is that you're applying for this demolition permit in advance of any transfer of the property.
correct.
Is that premature?
I don't think so, because because of, I don't know if you were here at the initial conversation, but we've spoken to a few builders, and as you know, most of the houses in Concord, because of the value of living in Concord and the land values, most houses that size are of a tear down nature, and when you've got a structure that's so deteriorated as this one, it's most certainly a tear down. So we're figuring if we have to wait a year after we put our application in and wait a year for to be able to do what we want to do, again, we know what all the builders want to do, then we're going to put our application in now and do our time. My dad wanted to say something, if that's okay, Heather.
There have been several houses, and lately the last one, Walter Stanley's house, right across the street from the Middlesex School. The Irwin's house right across the street. Other houses that have come up from sale, and Middlesex School has not attempted to, that I know of, to buy them. And they have not attempted to buy ours. They do relocate the buildings on their land to build their housing.
I don't think that we should presume that educational institutions have somebody on staff who's sitting around looking for opportunities like this. My guess is, as a former faculty member, that this is a kind of project that one has to come to an institution and say, can you work with the town to help save something? They're not going to initiate it on their own.
Well, we could certainly ask our realtor, Kurt Meehan, who lives about 2 houses down, and his family has lived in next to my family for close to 100 years. So we can ask Kurt if he wants to approach Middlesex. And if anyone here has any names or could forward any information to us, we'd gladly take it and try any avenue that is remotely possible. This was my dad's house, my grandfather's house, my sister's house. It's not something that we want to tear down, but in the end, it becomes what we can do with our own property. So, but if it can be saved, that would be fantastic. We'd love to see it.
I did approach Middlesex when we wanted to sell the farm, and they were not interested in buying the land.
My instinct is that there's a need for a body to express a public interest in the property besides the sellers to get action going.
I'm kind of confused by that last statement. What do you?
What I mean is that if you have a public body like the Historical Commission or the Concord Museum or the like to come in and weigh in on the public interest in this, that might carry some weight beyond the seller approaching the institution.
Oh, well, maybe we can do it a combination of 2 things. And work with you and go and set up either some type of strange meetings that we do these days, or meet outside, or do another Zoom meeting, or have some kind of an idea that you guys can come up with. We'll try anything.
Can I ask you one other thing on the road around the corner from you, which is named Barkus Farm Road?
Yeah.
There was a property that sold in July, a year ago, that also looks to be a colonial era house.
I
Or
don't.
was it Hartwell Road? There was anyway, one of the properties right nearby you. It contributes to the sense that there was a real neighborhood there.
I don't know. It's kind of strange because we have pictures of when my grandfather bought the property and there wasn't really any trees anywhere. And when I grew up, I'm 53. When I grew up, it was heavily treed, so you really couldn't see that house.
Excuse
me, this is Kurt Meehan. Does anybody have a point of contact at Middlesex School?
I think we can work on it.
I could try to find one.
I know a faculty member there.
Yeah,
who's
I'm in touch.
president of the Robbins
I'm in
House.
touch with quite a few people at the school. I don't know if I specifically somebody who would be in charge of these types of decisions, but I can certainly figure out who the point person would be for that.
Okay, that would be great.
If anyone has finds a point of contact, if you would just send it to me, we'll do everything through.
That's the way to go.
Commission.
The president of the Robbins House is a faculty member there.
So Heather, any communications to the Middlesex School should go through you, is that correct?
If it's coming from the Historical Commission, it should come through from staff. The applicant is always able to reach out on their own.
I had a follow-up question for the validity of the structure. Is it pertinent to have an engineer come in and take a look at the structure and forward that to you folks? I mean, are you going to continue this meeting to another time, or is there any other? I'd like to be able to have my dad look at several different options as we go along, not just, you know, an idea about talking to someone at Middlesex, but also if we start the clock, and that's the other question, does the clock start tonight for the 1 year period before the demolition is allowed? Or can we look into having an engineer come in and take a look at it to see if the house is sound enough or unsound to make it viable to be torn down?
So the commission would need to make a determination on whether the house is preferably preserved or not to kind of start that clock, but it's backdated to your application date.
Okay.
So no matter whether that determination is made tonight or you ask to continue it to their November meeting, and the determination is made then, the delay, the way our bylaw is written right now, the delay would begin on your application date.
So Heather, if it is found that the site is preferable or on the highest priority, and no matter if we find an engineer that says the building is not sound, because it's a high priority, we will still have to wait the full year. Is that correct?
That's up to the commission. It would be a discussion between them.
Okay. But after 1 year, regardless, we're able to receive our demolition permit, correct?
Correct. If the commission doesn't have any further comments, I would like to turn it over to public comment. Everyone okay with that?
Sure.
So if anyone from the public, I'm sorry I interrupted you earlier, has a public comment, you can unmute yourself and speak, or raise your hand and I'll unmute you.
Yes, this is Jack Trost, if you can hear me.
Yep.
I'm here, Heather, through the exchange of emails with you representing the Carlisle Historical Society. And I appreciate the background that was shared by Tom and Robert. You know, I'm sure based somewhat on your own historical records, but also on some of the historical records that we shared from the town of Carlisle. And I would just reiterate the importance of the property also to the history of Carlisle, which, as I think everybody on the phone knows, was once one town, Concord, and as I believe Tom and Robert both pointed out, that the village, if you will, or the district of the Carlisle First Religious Society, which was the beginning of the town, was established from historical records at this property because it does, we believe, date back to James Adams, who was Carlisle's first settler and had a mill property up the road from there. And I think it was also interesting as Robert pointed out, that our records also agree that there was no Lowell Road between essentially where the current, just south of the center of town, all the way down, that Lowell Road became, if you will, a secondary route after Monument Street. And that does account for some of the orientation. I guess just as a practical matter, I'm sensitive to the comments that Dan raised on behalf of his family. And one suggestion that I could make is I know that members of our board, in particular Larry Sorley, who you on the Concord Historical Commission may know, he was involved in the restoration of the Thoreau homestead, and he's a very, very well-known historical architect. Larry, who's on our board, has asked to visit the property. Well, he's an architect and not an engineer. My experience with Larry is that he understands a lot about historical properties, both structurally, architecturally, and I know that he would be interested in making that visit to provide some feedback on the property.
Larry's great.
I think we'd be more than willing to meet with anyone.
And he's seen a lot of these properties. And the other thing that I would say that's potentially beneficial about Larry is he's worked with a lot of these historic builders or builders that have worked with historical properties like Platt and others that, you know, understand how to do these kinds of projects. That doesn't necessarily mean that they may want to undertake the project as a buyer, but at least they could share information, and they have, you know, they're part of a network, which is more or less what I think Robert and Tom were alluding to, which is the idea that, you know, if you create some potential public interest, at least it would determine if there are those types of potential buyers, redevelopers, whatever the right word is.
Larry also did the Robbins house.
That's correct.
And I can testify, he looked at my house, which is a couple 100 years old, before we put in bookshelves in the attic 3rd floor, and gauged the carrying capacity, and house hasn't fallen apart yet from all the books. So I will vouch for him. Is there a possibility that the historical commission would do this, but we might talk afterwards about finding a way to create a public interest in a Concord Carlisle cooperative project to save this house?
Yeah, I think that's a definite. I mean, we have a property right now in Carlisle that is not currently on the market. It's an historic house, and we have our fingers crossed, so to speak, that we may have a buyer for the property who is essentially willing to come in and buy the property, you know, based on its historic significance, and make the renovations to the house essentially as a way of, if you will, preventing it from going on the market and becoming one that's just, you know, destroyed or demolished, rather. I'm sorry. And so, yes, I would absolutely say that, you know, once Larry were to take a look at it and kind of advise our board, we'd be more than happy, given the history of the property and its relationship to Carlisle, to work with you and with the Bartkus family in a way that's hopefully productive for everybody to come to a good solution.
Save Our Heritage might be interested as well, because the Chandlers were political allies of the Barretts in Concord.
Mm-hmm.
And that alliance was very important because Concord was bitterly split between Jeffersonian Republicans and Federalists, but most often it was a Republican town. So you can guess that this house was a site of intense political discussions during the embargo and the fear at the end of the 1790s, and then the War of 1812.
I'm sure. and yes, and getting groups like
Well,
that involved, and they've obviously have a great history in Concord.
Well, I was going to say, from the point of view of people like the Chandlers and the Republicans, the Federalists wanted to make Concord in America British again. Tom would like that.
Of course. Make Britain great again. Make America great again.
Maybe that has something I don't know about in terms of people moving up the road to Carlisle. I'm not sure.
It was a sanctuary town, yeah.
This is Kurt Meehan. Can I say something? Yes. All right. So I'm the real estate agent, so take it for what it is. But first of all, just so for the record, I've already tried to contact the Heritage, Save Our Heritage place, but they really haven't returned my email. So, but the second thing I just want to ask is a question on the records that we've got from the archives. There's a little box and it says the house was moved. So we assume it was dragged there, and that's the reason it doesn't have a foundation. Do we all know that and where it came from? Did it come from the mill area in Carlisle, or where did it come from? I don't think that was its original siting, is what I'm saying. Anyone?
Well, what I can say is that I seriously doubt that it was dragged down from the mill, but I don't know. I think, again, that's where what I've been impressed with somebody like Larry sorely is that, he's come into a number of houses in Carlisle and in some ways questioned even the history, but he could probably answer. I mean, he couldn't necessarily say where it was dragged from, but he probably could tell you for sure, that it was moved and maybe realistically how far it was moved.
Yeah, I don't know why that box is checked, because there was no other, nothing else except.
Given the date, it would seem unlikely that a house was moved. But on the other hand, these were people with not a lot of resources. So it could be that it was cheaper somehow to move a house onto that property. It was not uncommon for 17th, early 18th century houses to lack cellars.
Right. Do you have that paperwork that from the Mass Historical Society that says that?
No,
Can you show me where that is, Kurt, just so I can make sure I understand. I have the macros in front of me. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, it's the history with the house.
Yeah, that's the macros, I think.
Massachusetts Historical Commission has the box moved, check next to no. Date not.
Yeah, that's what I see. It says moved no.
Well, that was a huge mistake by me then. I thought it said moved.
I mean, the foundation that you described, Dan, would be not uncommon for the kind of original house, and then they kind of back into a foundation over time. So.
Yeah. Well, we would be happy if someone could buy the house. We'd be happiest if it could remain the house that it is today. Let's just put it that way. But financially, my dad's not going to hold on to it forever, and he's not going to go through the process at 80 years old, restoring it himself. So, we're more than happy to meet with the commission on site, go look in the cellar, walk through the house. They can bring their experts, or if you want us to have an engineer come through, but we'd like to leave all of our options open. But first and foremost, if it could be saved, that would be fantastic. And if someone could buy it, that would be the utmost benefit to everyone, especially us, if it could be purchased and restored. But we have to go both avenues at the same time.
Is there any other public comment? You just want to unmute yourself or raise your hand. So I don't know if the commission is ready to take a vote on this, or if the applicant did want to request a continuance to the next meeting to gather more information. That's up to the applicant and the commission.
Well, do you think that it's fair to make a vote without looking inside the house to see if the structure is sound, or are you just going to go on high priority?
The commission generally does not do site visits, and we don't view the interior of the house. If that's something that the commission's interested in pursuing, we can have a discussion on that.
So if there was information given to the commission to prove that the house was not sound or structurally sound, would that weigh? It would sway the commission to vote in a different way, or are they just wholeheartedly voting because it has historical value?
Since I've been on the commission, we've mainly voted on the historical value, seems to me.
Okay. So that helps, because then we don't have to spend money on an engineer. I guess I thought there was talking, I think I had spoke to Heather over a year ago or someone on the commission, that if a building was not sound and you could prove that, generally the commission will allow the demolition to move forward. But I guess that's not the case. So
it's something that's taken into consideration, but it doesn't make or break an application.
okay. And just in some of the emails we talked about, the house can be altered 99% without being torn down and not be considered a tear down, correct?
Right. So the bylaw is only triggered when 100% of the structure is demolished. So should someone want to tear down the garage or tear down the back half of the house, that would not trigger the demolition review.
Okay.
So that would be allowed. And then it's not in a historic district, and the historical commission doesn't have jurisdiction over changes like a historic district does. So if someone wanted to restore the house, there wouldn't be any sort of review process for, the types of windows they put in and the roof and the siding, that sort of thing. It would just be a building permit.
Okay. Well, if the commission can help us in any way to keep it from being torn down, we'll gladly come and meet the commission or meet anyone that the commission has in mind to help us move forward. If it's your wishes to keep it and you can help us, we will take all the help we can get.
So how's the commission feeling? Do you want to take a vote on this?
There are 5 of us right now.
Yep.
So I move that we say that the property is preferably preserved and move to invoke the 1-year demolition delay.
And I second that.
And then we need a roll call vote on that. So Michael?
Michael Cpc, I vote to issue the demolition delay.
Alan?
I vote to issue the delay.
Tom?
Yes, 1-year demolition delay.
Robert?
Yep, I agree.
And yes, 1-year demolition delay.
Can I just add as a commentary on this that This is the classic case where we should try everything possible to preserve a house. The owners want to preserve it, but are caught in a financial bind. We see the historical value. Our neighbor next door in Carlisle sees the importance of the house. We should do everything we can to facilitate its preservation.
So again, with that comment, Robert, does that mean that it would be the planning department that would work with them, or we can't individually work with them? Is that?
Well, then we, I was just gonna, as citizens of the town, I would be happy, Jack, if you find my email address on the University of Connecticut History Department website, send me a message and let's see if we can coordinate some efforts among citizens of the two towns.
Yeah, all communication should come through staff. So if Jack wants to send an email, I'll distribute it to everyone. Just all communication should come through me.
And I just want to reiterate, I love that we all seem on board with how important it is historically, and I will happily pass along contact info for Middlesex School to you, Heather, so that that's an avenue of possible solution here as well.
And Heather, if we want to reach out somehow with contacts or whatever to assist the homeowner, we can work that through you. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it goes to you and then you forward it to them?
Correct.
Right. Okay, great.
Yep.
Great. Okay. I'm sure you will hear from us.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to the next agenda item. Nancy, if you want to rejoin the meeting.
And I'm actually going to leave. Thank you very much for the time to speak, and I'll be in touch.
Thank
Bye, Bob.
you for your letter. The letter was.
Who she is.
We just wanted to thank you as well, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Where was she being?
Look forward to working with you all.
Okay. Heather, can you clarify that about the communication? All communication having to go through you as opposed to individuals speaking? Where is that? I'm unclear about that.
So if you have a contact person or an idea for someone to.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I'm understanding the authority or the source for that, or the regulation or whatever. Is it just?
It's because it's an application that's under demolition review by this commission. So just open meeting law reasons and all that, all communications should come through staff.
Even if
But
it's
we've now
one-on-one.
voted. So maybe Susan can help us out on this. It would seem to me that once a decision's been made and we want to put into effect efforts to save the house, we don't lose our rights as citizens of Concord.
However, you're still acting on behalf of the Historical Commission because you helped make this decision tonight. So any action, to save the house, you're acting as a member of the Historical Commission. So therefore it should come through staff.
Is that the same for all boards? I don't think so.
Yeah, all the boards.
I don't think it applies to the select board, right?
That would be.
I just want to clarify this. This is important.
That would be a question for Susan.
Yeah.
I'd have to get back to you on that, but I know for all of the other committees that I observe, it does go through the staff person. Any kind of communication goes back to the.
Okay.
Having, as the newest member of this commission, I've probably read the handbook most recently. Nancy, I can try and find for you. I seem to remember highlighting that passage just for my own benefit, so I can try and pull it up for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great. In the spirit of full disclosure, the applicants are my across the street neighbors. So also my kids went to Middlesex, so so it's kind of interesting. Maybe there's some potential. I'm asking because it would be very awkward to keep going back through you, Heather, just if there's a lot of ideas circulating.
I think
as opposed to policies.
All the ideas circulate through one person so that we have a record of it.
Yeah, I kind of, I understand that, but I don't understand the practical application.
But certainly we could be, like, let's suppose it was a dialogue between Middlesex. We could be CC'd and I could reply all and you would be on that thread, Heather, right? I mean, would that kind of thing be appropriate? Or no?
It depends, because you can't CC the rest of the commission.
Well, only if it's deliberation, right? It's not when it's an exchange of straightforward information.
But it's because it's under delay, I would consider it still an application that's in front of you, because they could come in front of you for a waiver request at any time during this 1 year.
And then we
And if all these side conversations and discussions have happened that, you know, we have no record of, then it kind of blurs the lines of what's appropriate and what's not.
Okay, so
Could someone have I'm just thinking about how these things happen. Could someone have a 3-way phone call with you on it?
Yes.
Okay. Because a lot of ways in which these things are brought about are people talking to each other, not just drawing up emails. But if you can be on a phone call, and that's legitimate, that could facilitate a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Email might also work, although at some point it's not that effective.
Well, when you're early on in conversations, it's often better to have them, you know, in person or on phone, rather than trying to stake out a position on email when you don't even know all that much.
Right.
But if I could interject, the thing you have to be really careful of is the open meeting law and how many people are talking to how many other people. And that's sort of what's driving this whole.
Well, that was one thing I was going to bring up, actually. If one or two of us are talking to somebody, say Larry Sorley, who I worked with the National Park Service for 20 years. So if two members of the commission, myself and somebody else, were talking to Larry Sorley and Heather was invited or copied, does that satisfy the concern?
Yes, 2 people could have a conversation. Yes.
Isn't it it's a majority? I said 2 people, but isn't it like 3 would be too many, I think.
3 would be too many, because that's a quorum.
Yes.
And then also sending out an email to like everyone on the commission that's not coming from staff, that's a quorum and breaks open meeting law.
Right. Yeah, I get that part. Okay, good. Okay. Larry's very highly regarded, by the way.
Yeah.
And his experience is incredible. He can be grumpy Yankee. Not really. That was a joke. Okay, we should proceed. Okay?
Yep.
The next item is a review of the demolition bylaw. And I have it here. I printed it.
Yeah, so I can share. I apologize. I got it up this afternoon, but it's basically what you looked at last meeting. I made that one amendment and then just put it into warrant article layout. So I can share my screen and show that to you.
So we'll need a vote on this, I believe, right?
If everyone's comfortable voting to, you know, submit the warrant article as drafted tonight, if people haven't gotten a chance to look at it because I got it up so late, we can always put it off to the next meeting. It's not something that has to get done tonight.
Okay, and Heather's been very clear about highlighting the sections and the language that's been changed. It's in bold, and the old language has a strike through. So like on page 1, 2.7, there you go, you see an example. Oh, that's so great. I don't even have to look at my copy. So we could go through those section by section. Is that, Heather, just hit the changes?
Yeah, so we discussed the changes at the last meeting. So this is the one, we took out a word before associated here, because I think we took out importantly associated. and just left it as associated. So that was changing 1941 to 50 or more years old, just changing, you know, the wording of the definition of historically significant and adding a bit more criteria as well, so we can perhaps capture more houses. And the other change, so this is all the same, it's just where it's written in the bylaw. The other change was something that came up tonight, was when the delay starts. So right now, the way the bylaw is written, the delay starts at the application date, no matter when the determination's made.
What section are you on?
I have to find what page.
There's section, yeah, you've been through A, B, C of 2.7, right? And then there's 2.9.
Yep, we're on page 3, 3.5.1.
Okay.
So it changes it to from the application date to the date that the determination or preferably preserved is made.
Right, got it.
And that's all the changes. I did make sure all like the formatting changes that I showed at the last meeting, I don't need to highlight in the bylaw amendments. It's just something that can be done.
Okay. So a period of discussion would be important.
People
From
have,
members of the commission. Any questions? Have people had a chance now or previously to look at the changes?
I did before. You know, I saw them before and
Okay.
very supportive. I thought it was
Yeah.
very well done.
And yeah, and do they seem, with Heather's walking through those changes, do they seem correct to folks?
Yeah.
Right.
Any questions in particular? Does anyone feel comfortable making a motion to approve these as submitted by Heather?
Sure, I'll make that.
Is that okay, Heather?
the motion should be to submit the warrant article as drafted.
Oh, thank you. Is anyone ready to make a motion to submit the warrant article as drafted by Heather and discussed tonight?
Yes, I will.
Michael. Is that so moved?
So
And
moved.
we need a second?
I second it.
Okay. And then is this a roll call vote
Yes.
too? Okay. Michael?
Excuse me, yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yep.
And Heather, or Rebecca, I'm sorry. Heather,
Yes.
how do you vote? Rebecca, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes.
Okay.
So that's unanimous.
So I will get that submitted or leave it on my to-do list for someone to submit it when the deadline comes up, because I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's
If I
right.
send it to the town manager's office now, I don't know if that email is set up to receive warrant articles yet.
Oh, when do you think that might happen? We could make a note.
I don't know, just because I don't know what the schedule for town meeting is going to be yet, if it's
Right.
changing or not. But I have a very detailed to-do list for when I'm out.
Okay, and do you know who's going to fill in for you?
It may be, it'll be someone from the planning division, whether it's,
Okay,
you know, Marcia, Elizabeth, Heather Carey, Nancy, or who's ever available to run the meeting that night. I'm not sure how they're going to work out who's covering for me while I'm out.
okay, that's great. Okay, so we can move on to item number 3. The sustainability guide to historic and older homes. What I know about this is not sufficient at this point, but I know that Heather had an intern this summer and she did a lot of work on this topic, and the report from a quick scan on the materials Heather posted looks really interesting. It's 55 pages long, so.
Yeah, so I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look over that yet. We had a fellow this summer through the sustainability department, and she was looking at creating these guidelines for older and historic homes. So it's something that I'd just like the commission to review, and we can have a discussion on when everyone feels that they've had enough time to kind of read over the material, and perhaps discuss having a link to this guide on our webpage, on the Historical Commission's webpage, because I do know a lot of times these houses come up for demolition review and the owners are saying that they can't bring the house up to the energy standards that they want, and it's not sustainable anymore. And these guidelines kind of speak to that in different ways that they can be addressed through like windows and insulation and that sort of thing. So I think it's important for us to look at.
I thought it was extremely thorough, and I don't know if Alan, have you had a chance to look at it, Alan?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Look, I think it would be extremely useful if you did, because I think your experience and knowledge would be very helpful. But Heather, I thought it was a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I read almost all of it. I read until my ink ran out. I printed the whole thing and my ink was gone by about page 45, so I got through almost all of it.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's great.
The thing that really jumped out at me was her breakdown for each element of the house of a lower cost option and a higher cost option. And I was remembering how if we had done that awards ceremony back in May, I think our topic was going to be how important it was to save these houses, even with the monetary and the financial aspect of things. And I think if this is a resource that we can provide to people going forwards, specifically pointing them to that lower cost versus higher cost end of each chapter, I think that's fantastic.
Could we unveil this report, if you will, when we can all get together in a meeting with real estate agents in town?
Oh, interesting. Very interesting idea. That would be an easy thing to do and a good resource to make available to them, and they could then do the publication for their clients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think part of us discussing it and putting it on our website is just to kind of get it out there more. So, we're spreading that information and getting it out there, because people that own a historic home are probably not going to think to look for this on the sustainability website of, the town sustainability page. But they may be browsing the Historical Commission's page or the HDC's page and come across it.
Yeah.
Be part of the home buying process in Concord.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So I don't, if I think maybe we'll put it off to vote to put it on our website or whatnot until a few more people have had a chance to read through it thoroughly.
Yeah, that'd be appreciated. Thank you. Okay, then moving on to item number 4, the Save Our Heritage letter. I thought it was interesting to read the whole letter, which Heather posted as well, in addition to the memo that Melissa sent that lifted a section of it. I was very happy to read that Save Our Heritage was involved to the extent that 3 rooms of that are going to be preserved. That's absolutely amazing. I was so worried watching the dumpsters in front of that house, knowing that Barrett shamrock was in that house, and probably a lot of paneling, and I'd love to know more about that. But anyway, the question is whether or not the commission will write a letter to, is it ZBA?
Yes.
I'm gonna have trouble reading this right now. To encourage them to allow a variance in the buildable amount of square footage allowed on that lot. The lot's small for lots in this area. And Heather did say that it's a building inspector call whether or not that's a buildable lot, but it sounds like the assumption all around is that it can be rebuilt. I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my houses. Sorry, ignore that.
We're talking about.
No, I misspoke. I misspoke. I'm talking about 2 things at the same time. But I think it's, I think the question is the commission supportive of writing a letter to encourage the allowing of 200 square feet, right? additional in order to save this historic jet buy. I'm wondering,
Well, this was the Major James Barrett house. It's
Yes.
a double house.
yes.
Which I got to see it before it was sold
Oh,
last time. And while it needs a lot of work, it's an incredibly important house. The son of Colonel James Barrett, Major James Barrett, played a leading role in this town for about 40 years or 50 years. And the doubleness of the house really stands out as a kind of architectural testament to the desire to establish families on the landscape and keep as many of them there as possible. It
Do you
was also,
remember the date of the house?
I think that Colonel James built it for his son.
His son, for his,
the
that's,
major. So that would have been in the 18th century, probably
that's what I thought.
1760s. I think maybe 1767 or something like that. I kind of remember.
I don't, yeah, I don't know.
but,
I'm looking for it.
um,
See it offhand.
I believe that, so Major James Barrett, I think was a county justice. So it probably also served as a place where he could hold court, a JP court. So there are a lot of reasons to want to maintain that property. And especially the sense of, with relation to the Colonel James Barrett house, the sense of why was it called Barrett's Mill Road? You can see right there on the landscape,
Yeah.
the set of families.
This is a little aside from that, but speaking of the Major's mills, there were two, a wood mill and a grist mill, correct?
Right, that's right, yeah.
And Judy Perkins lives in the house that was the sawmill.
Grist mill, wasn't it?
I'm sorry?
I thought it was the grist mill that her house.
You could be right. I might be wrong, but that is a really, really interesting archaeological feature. Anyway, so
And down the road, still using the water power, the Monroes use that for their pencils, for grinding the graphite for their pencils.
which house?
If you go, if you go to the beginning of Barrett's Mill Road on the turnoff from
Yeah,
Lowell Road,
yeah,
you
yeah.
go a little ways down and you'll be at what was William Monroe's house. And he used a mill somewhere along there to grind the graphite for his pencils.
That's so interesting. So is there any feeling about this? Discussion? The request is to write a letter encouraging the Zoning Board of Appeals, I figure is the correct board, in support of allowing more building space, correct? Yeah.
Does that mean encroaching upon the boundary, the property line?
I don't know, but it's within the ZBA's purview to grant that kind of a variance, I think.
What are the options? If no variance is granted, then what?
It's in here somewhere in the longer letter,
I think then they can't save that Beverly jog.
the Beverly jog, right? So they would ostensibly just use the square footage in a different way, and that would require demolition of the historical feature.
Well, given our mission, seems to me that would be a no-brainer that we would want to support it.
Yeah, I would think so. I know Melissa is strongly in favor of that, if I can convey her thinking. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. No, I make a motion.
To write a letter to the Zoning Board of Appeals, granting the request of the architects
Yes.
And I second that.
Help us here.
I assume and Heather's writing the letter. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would write it on behalf of the commission.
All the easier to support.
And Heather, will we see that draft before it goes out, or once we voted, do we just entrust you with sending that letter?
Yeah, I would just send it so they would get it in time. Otherwise, it would have to wait until your November meeting.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So I second the motion.
Oh, good. Thank you, Bob. Okay, all in favor. We can go around roll call vote. Michael,
Yes.
Ellen,
Favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
and Bob,
Yep.
and I vote yes. Great. Very good. Reappointing the CPC Liaison. I'm currently filling that position. The Historical Commission has a seat on the CPC, and it has taken a while to get my legs on that commission. I'm willing to continue, but other people may have other ideas. So.
I'm all for experience.
Great. Is that a vote? Does that require a vote?
Yeah, we do need a vote on who the liaison will be.
I'll move to reappoint Nancy.
I'll second it.
And we do need a roll call on that.
Okay, I guess I have to abstain. Michael?
I vote yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Bob? This seems it seems a little awkward.
Yes.
It's a very interesting committee, and I'll try to keep coming back to you. John Kratzley had been chair, and he was a great chair. And I think the leadership coming on has been well groomed. So Tom Keene is going to be the new chair. So that's great. Thank you, everybody. It's a lot of work, though. It's like piles of stuff.
Yeah, you're getting them all on Friday.
Oh, really?
Tomorrow. You're getting them tomorrow.
Tomorrow, great. Oh, yeah, it's because the applications for the next round should have been submitted, obviously.
Tomorrow.
How many?
We're getting a lot.
What does it look like? I mean, like.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to the office tomorrow, so we'll see.
I'll come pick them up.
I can drop them off to you.
You can? Okay. All right. Okay. Good. Then other business, right?
Yes.
Anybody have any other business to bring up? Comments, questions, oddball things?
I'm assuming no update on that MBTA. I think we left it that the town was going to follow up. Is that right, Susan? And I'm assuming no update.
Yes, I've been in touch with the town manager who did, we're talking about the West Concord Depot?
Right, yeah.
Who was in touch prior to COVID and had a fairly productive discussion with the MBTA, but post-COVID, with their revenues depleted as they are, it's not something that's on the top of their list, but they do have issued an RFP for an occupant for the property. And if that new person takes it over, the maintenance will be included in that contract.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah,
Do you know any details about the RFP?
I don't.
That's such a well-located, attractive little structure. It's fun to imagine what might happen there.
Yes, yeah. So we'll see who responds.
And is that with Kate, the RFP? Or in the town manager's office, or?
Town manager's office.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Anybody else? I have one thing that I brought to everybody's attention last time. Two things, actually. I'd like to bring it back to your attention again. Three things. Wheeler Harrington House, the status, and I think Heather had some information about that.
Yeah, so the town manager's office has sent a letter to the tenants letting them know that when their lease expires next December, so not this coming December, but 2021, the town will not be renewing their lease. So they have been given a 1-year notice that the lease will not be renewed.
Is that because of their evasion of the terms of the lease?
I think there's probably a lot of things that went into that decision to not renew the lease.
So that's good to know that's going to happen. I'm curious whether or not the idea of a charrette regarding the future use of the property might be entertained. It might be early to know that.
I
But
believe Marcia is going to submit a CPC application, but I haven't seen it yet.
oh, that'd be great. You haven't seen it in that big stack of stuff you have?
I haven't been in the office yet. I work
Oh,
from
okay. Oh, okay.
so I'm going in the office tomorrow.
Okay. And anybody else? I have another couple. That's one. The Route 2A project, while mostly does not affect Concord, I would just like to suggest that Route 2A runs right through the heart of the national park, and it overlays the historic Battle Road. And I'm trying to stay in touch with Mass Highway about what's going to happen out there. There's lots of different concepts that have been presented to stakeholders, but not to the general public yet. They're going to combine 25% documents and drawings with 75% documents and drawings, because they don't think that the work they're going to propose has potential to adversely impact the historic resources of the park and the town. So I think some of the things that they're going to consider will adversely impact the national park. So I'm watching that. And then Haywood Meadow, just for fun, the questions around the management of the fields at the old manse are similar to questions now being considered for the management of the Haywood Meadow. It's very important to the town historically as a piece of land that's been continuously opened and mostly in agricultural use since the 1600s, I think. Bob, I'm looking right at you. But now there has been very strong pressure to turn that into like pollinator garden and whatnot. Some of the plants in there are very, very tall, not agriculturally suggestive. The views are more closed in. So there's an active conversation about the management of that historic landscape, and the conversation continues at the old manse. These are issues the national park also faces, and probably others.
Nancy, so that meadow was probably overflowing with water much of the year while the mill was still there.
Right.
So
big mill.
the question is, whose landscape at what point in Concord's history are we preserving? And I think when you can debate that, there are good grounds then for saying, well, are there other sensitive land uses that can also adapt and be taken up?
Right.
So, pollinators and all strike me as not a bad idea for a property that, after all, was rescued from being a quagmire for mosquitoes.
Oh, you sound just like the argument for Central Park in New York to drain that mosquito habitat.
Oh, just call me Olmsted.
Well, I think it's a fascinating discussion because it's absolutely important to have better stewardship for the insects and other things that make our crops healthy.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
not to mention monarch butterflies and the fact that they're beautiful. But I don't think that the conveyance of the historical nature of that space has to be in direct opposition to that. So
Right.
there are short pollinators as opposed to 5'5" pollinators, that kind of thing. So I think just it's an interesting discussion. That's all. And I've suggested, as the 2005 plan did, that in the management of that area, that other town commissions and committees be consulted, and HDC and I think DPW is mentioned, but I've suggested to Delia that probably they should consult with the historical commission.
Can I suggest one other thing? Immediately across Lexington Road from Haywood Meadow
Yeah.
is the house of the man and family for which the meadow's named.
Yes.
Abile Haywood was the town clerk of Concord for 3.5 decades, or maybe 4 decades. And, you know, if you look at that house, it has that little tiny L who was in office. And Abile Haywood was justice of the peace, and he married a lot of couples there. And some years back, an African-American woman from Philadelphia, who's descended from Black people from Concord from the Revolutionary period, came to visit for Robin's House purposes. And I was somehow in a car with her and pointed out that little L is where her ancestors were married.
Wow.
So my point in telling you the story is the house is being treated by the people restoring the meadow as if it was separate entirely from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Exactly.
so you have environmentalists who cut off an understanding of environment and landscape in order to preserve some small part of it and not think of the whole.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nancy, can you just confirm who's having these discussions, and is it open to the general public in Concord, or is this?
It's conservation land. So Delia Kay is the point person. She's fantastic. The meetings are public, and if you're interested, I could pass along when the meetings are going to be held.
Are they all over Zoom right now? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, there was a work day actually
Okay.
recently, and that was fun because some very, very tall plants were pulled by consensus, I think, and so but the meetings are more Zoomy.
Yeah. No, I'd love to sit in on one. So.
Okay. But it's interesting. I think it's fascinating, actually. Sorry. Anybody else? That's all I had. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I think we have minutes.
We have minutes. Thank you.
To accept the minutes.
I did not have comments on the minutes. Any comments?
They looked good.
Make a motion, we accept the minutes.
Second?
Very good. Can we do a voice vote on this or not?
Everything's supposed to be roll call on Zoom.
Everything is. I think you're very conscientious. I've seen some raise hand meetings. Anyway, Michael.
Yes, I vote in favor.
Alan.
Yes.
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
And me too. Thanks for the reminder. And that was, let's see.
I move we adjourn.
I think so. Did we have two? Oh, no, we don't. Never mind. Looking at the wrong meeting. Yeah, is there a second? Did we get a second?
I second.
Everybody wants to do it.
Adjourn.
Okay. Michael?
I vote, yeah, I vote to.
Yeah, you should. Okay. Alan?
Yes.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Robert?
I'm out of here.
Thanks, Heather.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thank you, Heather.
Aye.
Thanks, Heather.
Come on.
Congratulations.
Talk to you soon. Take care.